We're waiting for everything to come on. This is Mental Health Mondays. I'm Dr. Paul, and we'll be right with you. We're just going to get everything all programmed and all snippy ready for you. I'd like to thank all my people for listening to iHeart and iTunes and all where you get all your podcast channels. And you can also watch them on Facebook Live. To let people know that they can get it there. To let people know that you can always ask me questions here on the screen. So welcome, everybody. This is Dr. Paul. Welcome to Mental Health Mondays. I've been doing this Mental Health Mondays for a while now. It's been several weeks. And most of you people understand why I started it. It is because during this pandemic, we have realized that it uncovered so much of our mental health issues. And our mental health issues are important. We've always known that they'd be important, but they've actually been a taboo in the black community. There are reasons why. I'm just letting people know here on Facebook that they can contact me if they have any questions. So, with that being said, Mental Health Mondays is providing an avenue, along with a lot of my program, is to provide an avenue for people to ask questions, get something off their chest. You know, this pandemic has cost a lot of lives. And the lives that it's cost and still taking has more to do with a lack of a lot of things. I talked about anger. I talked about, when we go through those progressions of anger, resentment, and denial, it plays a big part on us. And I like to get into the neuroscience of how your emotions are doing that with my emotional reaction training. It helps you focus on your understanding, not the reasons, your understanding. And when you have an understanding of what is, right? What is what? And this way it will help you know how to do the next thing. When you understand what is what, you can then devise a plan to do the next thing. Doing the next thing can be anything. There's so many things. It's almost like when you pick an apple, what can you do with it? You could turn it into candy. You could turn it into a pie. You can turn the apple into anything, and then you can use the seeds to grow more. Well, mental health and other things, mental health especially, when it comes to understanding how you think, what you think, and when you think it, is when you understand it, you can then use that to grow other things. And then you have a choice to grow things that are healthy for you. Often, our minds are running themselves. The monkey mind. The mind that just does all what it wants to do. I wrote a theory called the crock-pot mind, and that we're overcooking so many emotional states. So many feelings are thrown inside the pot and it's stirring up, and we have no idea what we're cooking. And we're not going to have any idea what it tastes like. And then coming from Thanksgiving, I hope people had a safe one. I know a lot of people were depressed during Thanksgiving. I had a bout of sadness. Now, what's the difference between sadness and depression? Depression is a state. Depression is a state. Sadness is an understanding. Depression is a state. So what I mean by state, so when you are in depression, you're in a catechism of heaviness. Sadness and understanding of the why. Depression is not often understood. Can you be depressed and understand it? The reason I'm going to say no, and if you have any thoughts on this, please chime in. You can always hit me up on Facebook. You can always chime in here on YouTube, and you can always text me here. Depression has a hold on you. Sadness is an understanding of your feeling. It's a feeling. And you can be sad. You can go from sad to depression, absolutely. But then, I think depression is a state of hold. You're being held in. Mourning is not. Can mourning go into depression? Yes, people can mourn and then become depressed because you understand why you're mourning, but then it has a hold on you, and that's depression. Does that seem to clear it up? Make sense for you? So, I was in a sad moment also doing Thanksgiving. Many reasons. All kinds of reasons. And they all had their own individual sadness. My sadness doesn't cover many things. Sadness, to me, has a specific understanding of the why. If I'm sad because of my children, not seeing my children, grandchildren, sickness, death in family, death in friends, that is very specific. It's not just I'm sad and then I'm throwing these things in it. And the reason I wouldn't suggest that is because when you start throwing things in on sadness, creating that overall sadness, you're going to lose your individual self and you're going to fall into depression. Does that make sense? Because then you're going to be in a state, and that state's going to be I'm being held and I don't know which is holding me more. So I thoroughly believe in understanding the state that you're in and knowing who you are and where you are and what you are in your present moment and in your moment. Now that does take practice. Now I do a lot of meditation. What's the difference between meditation and prayer? One can be an ask, one is an action. Meditation is not an ask. I know some people use prayer as an ask, but it can also be a thankfulness, right? Meditation is just a literally internal practice of splitting your transmission, internal transmission energy and your spirit into its strong energy flow. And it can be to break open something that has been hardening within inside of you. So then you're able to capture all those different things that may leak out, and then you can hug them. Meditation is used for many different things. What bothers me about meditation and the use for meditation and people saying, oh, just meditate and be quiet, be still. All those things are true, but there's so many different avenues of how to do it, how to do it, the breathing of what to do in your meditation, because it affects your body in so many different ways. Being still is very hard for people. Being still mentally, being still physically is very hard for people. To be still and to let things just come up and arise up is also very good, but then it starts to run out. And then now you don't know you end up, it's like herding cats. So meditation, I meditate a lot. And it is most often, there's 3 types of meditation I do in a day. One is to gather strength, one is to sustain my strength, and one is to give off strength. The prayers I do and mantras I do is all thankfulness, being very thankful. I don't have ask. There has been ask in some prayers I've done, but I don't do me for a majority of ask. I do a lot of just thankfulness. And so when it comes to mindfulness, when people say be mindful in your practice, that means to be aware. And being aware To develop your awareness, even in your meditation, is to be aware of even the small things you are saying. To be aware of the small things you're saying. Now, there are words that people are saying and it just runs out. But how do you get to that practice, to be in mindfulness? Start noticing the smaller things before the larger things. In objects in itself, or in nature in itself, or as you're driving. Notice small, see big. So that's one of those practices, because once you start noticing small and you see big, then you're able to see small, understand big. And that's a progression there. And that happens with mindfulness, understanding mindfulness. But there's different ways to break down mindfulness, and everyone cannot develop mindfulness the same way. Everyone cannot develop mindfulness the same way. That's why there's many books out there on mindfulness, because you won't know what works for you until it doesn't work for you. And then it's sometimes often given that you're not working hard enough at it. And that is just not true. You're just not understanding it in the way that does fit you. And that's why having a mindfulness teacher helps, because a teacher can help you format your way into developing mindfulness. Now, Mental Health Mondays, we know that, and I don't always want to keep clarifying that it's because of something. But we do know the pandemic uncovered a lot of things. We do know that the pandemic uncovered a lot of things. When it comes to our children are having a lot of difficult times in this virtual learning. Even when the kids or the children are pushing through, we know that when it comes to college kids, some of the isolation, because some don't have dorm mates, some do, depending on the university and where you're at. Some have been isolated for over 4 weeks, all by themselves, doing virtual learning, maybe seeing someone as they walk through campus. In high school, they are virtually learning, so they don't get to see their classmates. Maybe online, maybe they're doing the social media stuff. But we as humans are a collective collaboration animal. We feel the energy. That is how we're built. We are transmitters and receivers. Because we have consciousness and subconsciousness, but we are transmitters and receivers. So our children are picking up a lot of receiving from parental transmission. Now, if our kids are having a tough time, because teenagers have tough times, right? They probably are having more of a tough time because we as parents are transmitting frustration. This is not a fault thing. I just want you to recognize what you could be transmitting. And there's really, but if you are transmitting, say I have something disastrous happens. Say something happens. It doesn't have to be disastrous all the time. It doesn't always have to be doom and gloom, right? So something happens. You are feeling anxious, upset, or even angry about it. Relaying that to your children when they're in that space, I think would be beneficial. Now, if you don't relay that in that space, because this is something that you need to hold on to, you don't need to give the children the particulars. Whatever how you want to raise your children, raise your children. You don't have to give your children the particulars. But clarifying to the children or to the people in the space that this is something you are in this moment struggling with. That gives them the okay to also voice their opinion when they are going through something. Because remember, we're receivers and transmitters. And if you don't know what you're transmitting, think about what someone else is receiving. And that's why I go with the emotional reaction training. It's understanding your who, what, and the how. Because if you understand it, then you understand your transmission. And then if you understand how, because when you receive things, you're always receiving things. And you put them in, your consciousness puts them into their little bit of folders. That's what your subconscious starts to catalog. Your conscious does it. Your subconscious starts putting them into folders and put them into slots. And then starts referring back to that as an experience. And that's where often we pull so many experiences from, is through the subconscious, is pulling out a folder, seeing how I felt with it, but yet it's going through an old experience, not a new experience. In the practice, in the practice I do, and I'm a Buddhist practice, is that we understand our presence and our emotions as the now. So we don't allow ourselves to put things into a folder to be left to be referenced to. It's referenced now, it's understood now, it's hugged now, it's felt now, it's believed now, and then we move to the next moment. When you don't allow, what happens when so many things are coming to you? That's where your meditation comes in, because then that allows you to go through that period of between this hour and whatever time hour to go through all those things you've just received received, right? And in that reception, it's triggering things. And in that trigger, that's where your meditation is able to hold on to it and say, hey, oh, wow, I didn't know that I was still thinking of this, harboring this. I thought I resolved this. But yet you're able to now lay it out, absorb it more. Because when we are going through something over and over again, it's because we have not absorbed it. We have not absorbed it through an understanding. So it becomes what you call a soaked pain. And that's where pain comes in. Can you have pain in the conscious state? Yeah, absolutely. But pain is only triggered through a reference. Pain is only triggered through a reference.